Hi there, this is KD from stolenhistory.org. I finally decided to record a short video. Well, it's gonna be more like an audio recording with some images sprinkled in. I'm more used to typing, obviously, so don't judge me too hard on my video making abilities. I'm just learning this entire process. There were some individuals on the Bygone forum insinuating that I was some sort of alphabet agency guy disclosing stuff. Well, I wish I had that sacred knowledge of our true history, but I do not. Needless to say, I've never been a part of the above mentioned agencies. I'm just one of the researchers looking for answers. As you can hear, I have a Russian accent. Indeed, I was born in the Soviet Union and immigrated to the United States in 1997. Did a few things here and there. Lived in Georgia, North Carolina, Colorado, Washington State, and some other places. But eventually ended up in Florida, where I'm currently at. With that out of the way, for those wondering why I finally decided to make a video. There probably is no one single reason for that, but one of them is me trying to motivate myself to continue the research. I came to a dead end in my understanding of the actual process of how our history was falsified. It's quite easy to pinpoint individual historical inconsistencies, chronological flaws, technological mismatches, architectural wonders, lack of infrastructure, facts insulting our intelligence, and things we find hard to believe based on our life experiences. Our observations in turn develop into specific patterns we start to recognize. And just like that, the official historical narrative falls apart. Once you see it, you are never the same, and you all know that. Yet, I came to realize that I ran out of ideas of how these historical shenanigans could have been pulled off on the scale we observe today. Mere logistics required to get certain aspects of such a falsification implemented are incomprehensible, in my opinion. For an example, let's look at the urban fires of the second half of the 19th century. It's the same occurrence over and over again. For decades, stupid people do not realize that buildings made of wood burn easily. Alleged, mostly wooden cities keep on getting built right after other, mostly wooden cities burn 50 miles away. Every time it results in new city ordinances requiring structures to be constructed of brick and stone. I'm not even talking about the fact that available photographic evidence suggests that mostly wooden claim is a lie. Neither do I emphasize the point that it's highly disrespectful to our ancestors when historians consider them to be utterly stupid to keep on building wood-based cities year after year without learning from dreadful experiences of their neighbors. What amazes me is how the very next day multiple periodic newspapers around the country and abroad published the story of a particular great fire that happened the day prior. These timely publications solidify the fact that this particular event did happen on this date, this location, and under these particular circumstances. This in turn suggests that people back in the day were indeed stupid. Cities were made of wood, and all urban fires were spread out in time on the scale presented to us. This is where researchers of our true history, myself included, start noticing loads of BS. Amazing brick and stone architecture, allegedly destroyed by fire, looks like it was annihilated by some nuclear explosion. Barely any people died in the process. Wooden utility poles and trees, sometimes with foliage, are still standing. This is where we run into some questions. If we are being lied about the true events surrounding the destruction of these multiple cities, then who was coordinating newspaper publications for over 50 years? And how is it possible that contemporaries to the events in no way, shape, or form were able to expose the lies? Censoring a book is easy. Censoring all the newspapers, magazines, and journals is quite a bit harder. Censoring everyone involved is borderline impossible. So, did the annihilation of all the so-called urban fire-destroyed cities happened at the same time, or was spread out for decades as we're being told? Did everyone die in the process and naturally could not expose the lies? Or year after year was able to escape consequences of the actual urban fires and was in agreement with the suggested narrative based on their observation and understanding of the events? If everything happened at the same time and everyone died, then what logistics were required to create all the newspaper articles properly spread out in time and geography, and supporting all other contemporary events attributed to the particular geographic region where a newspaper was published? Otherwise, we would have to accept that the official Wikipedia narrative is true. But it's hard to believe that civilization capable of building structures we see in the pre-fire photographs was dumb and stupid. If you have any other explanations, please share. Urban fires is just one of the examples. The same logic can be applied to many other investigative instances. Every time when a researcher, based on his or her investigation, rightfully questions the existence of some prominent 19th century figure, there will be 19th century newspaper articles or books suggesting that that particular person did exist. Then we have exhibitions and expositions, where construction logistics and destruction explanations question our sanity, and the attendance of which appears to be impossible under the current historical narrative. Yet, nowhere do we see that there were billions of people in existence at the time. For some of us, the existence of the Second Industrial Revolution suggests that it was being used to reintroduce technological achievements of the past. Presented inventions do not appear to have proper precursors suggesting natural development. At some point, things simply start appearing in their finished form. Nowhere can we trace a documented existence of a highly advanced industrial world predating 1850s, 1860s. Yet the architecture, fairy tales, folklore, and accidental equipment findings suggest just that. In accordance with our understanding of reality, developing things takes education, logistics, and time. At least it's supposed to. In the first half of the 19th century, some not properly educated priest cannot just invent a fully functional fax machine, and some artillery officer cannot develop a fully functional submarine without a proper education. This means that our narrative also misses a huge chunk of history where a civilization comparable to ours existed. And based on available physical evidence, it had to exist just prior to 1850s, 1860s. That civilization had to have proper education, infrastructure, and much bigger population numbers. We understand that it had to exist, but to be purged from history to the level we experience, there had to be some borderline divine force at play. This is just my opinion on the matter. A short while ago, there were some AI-generated photographs of Antarctica circulating on the internet. At the early stages of the existence of said images, some researchers were entertaining an idea of them being authentic. Images are indeed interesting, and I can see how they could fool a person or two, or three and more for that matter. You're probably wondering why I'm bringing these AI-generated photographs up. At some point, I started to question traditional methods of falsification and my own approach to the issue. I realized that my mind was operating within the constraints of what I considered to be humanly possible, based on my personal experiences. Pretty much the only falsification method I considered was replacing one set of historical documents with a fraudulent one. Naturally, my analysis was limited to what I could logically explain. Yet, the volume of falsification I observed defied logic. Certain things were missing in my understanding of the process of falsification itself. Along the way, some thoughts started to develop. Eventually, I started to consider that my lack of understanding of the process of history falsification was based on me not understanding where we exist, as in, what is our planet Earth. I am not a religious person, but thoughts of creator or creators were visiting my mind more and more often. This is where the answer to the proverbial question of why it matters what the real shape of our planet is started to appear more and more important. On one hand, we have a naturally occurring Big Bang type planetary system, where Earth is just a planet. On the other, we have an artificially created enclosure, where everything else was artificially created. I started to think that if our Earth was created artificially, then answers to history falsification questions could not be answered without understanding of the rules imposed on our enclosure by the creator or creators. I did call this enterprise a Skylab in one of my articles before. Certain processes on Earth are controlled by the laws of physics. If such laws do exist, and the Earth system was created by a creator, then the laws of physics were also created by the creator. Naturally, it's logical to assume that there could be some other laws in existence. The laws the general public is not aware of. The laws that are not purely physical in nature. The laws that only a select few are privy to. I'm possibly talking about the proverbial controllers here. In today's society, there is a considerable freakout over the climate change and a strongly defined multifaceted movement geared towards the destruction of the traditional family. Both the climate change policies and movements leading to the destruction of the traditional family lead to less people being born. And this is a what-if territory for me. What if there are laws introduced by the creator of our Earth system governing the population numbers, as in every time when the world population reaches X number of souls, the rapture or human harvesting gets triggered. Or similarly, when our collective human DNA is no longer representative of the creator's original work, a reset gets initiated. Anatomically, modern humans emerged around 300,000 years ago, the narrative suggests. There has to be an alternate reason why in the year 1800 the world population consisted of only 1 billion, while 220 years later the official numbers topped 8 billion. I realize that I will not be able to fit everything I have to say within this single video. So naturally, other topics like giants, chimeric beings, and other history comprising issues will have to be covered later. But while I'm at it, I wanted to attract your attention to the Great Seal of the United States, in particular to the part where it says 1776, New Order of Ages. I believe there is a very particular meaning to this. Without elaborating, I wanted to mention that all our major archaeological and technological discoveries and so-called inventions were made after 1776. Wouldn't it be logical to suggest that the previous spin of our civilization went extinct just prior to this date? I'm not suggesting that our chronology is even remotely correct, but there have to be some dates we could use for the point of reference. Was there a single war after 1776 that was not eventually won by the good guys? How suspicious is that? As we all understand, our history is written by the victors, or maybe by the survivors. It's hard to hide an event, but it appears to be fairly easy to change circumstances surrounding such an event, as to its true causes and sometimes its real participants. Oh well, I think it's enough for my first video. I understand that not everyone will get what I was talking about here. The opinion presented was geared primarily towards those familiar with my prior work on the issue of our stolen history. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Continue in your search for the truth, for as the growing movement shows, some of us do care and want to know what the truth is.